Malik was only 12 years old, but life had already taught him things that even adults struggled to understand. Every morning he woke up on a piece of cardboard behind an old grocery store, the smell of rotten vegetables and cold metal filling the air. His clothes were torn, his shoes had holes, and his small hands were always dirty, but he didn't complain. He had no one to complain to anyway. People walked past him every day without looking at him, as if he was a shadow, as if he was invisible. Malik had learned to stay quiet, to stay small, to avoid trouble, but his heart was still warm even after everything he had suffered. He collected empty bottles from trash bins and sold them for a few coins. Sometimes he found half-eaten sandwiches. Sometimes he didn't eat at all. He would watch families walk by with warm clothes, holding hands, laughing. He dreamed of having a place like that, a home where someone said his name with love, a place where he didn't have to shake from cold wind or hide from angry people who chased him away. But dreams were things he kept locked inside, because reality was too hard and dreaming hurt too much. Through all of this, Malik never let his heart turn bitter. When he found extra food, he shared it with the younger homeless children. When stray dogs came near him, he gently petted them and gave them crumbs. Even when people shouted at him or pushed him aside, he whispered sorry instead of fighting back. His kindness was the only thing he still owned, the only thing no one had taken away from him. On one cold evening, the sky was gray and heavy, and Malik felt his stomach twist with hunger. He had only eaten a small biscuit the entire day, his legs were weak, and his hands shook as he searched for bottles and trash cans behind a row of restaurants. People inside were laughing, eating warm meals and clinking glasses. The smell of cooked food made his mouth water, but he kept walking, his eyes focused on the ground, hoping to find something that would help him survive another night. He picked up a plastic bottle and reached into a dark alley to grab another when he heard something strange. At first he thought it was the wind, a soft broken sound, like someone trying to breathe but failing. He froze, his small body tense. Then he heard it again, a weak cry, a painful whisper. It wasn't an animal, it wasn't a baby, it was a grown woman's voice trembling with fear. Malik's heart thumped faster. He looked around but saw no one. It would be safer to walk away. He was just a kid, and trouble always found him when he stayed too long in one place. But something inside him wouldn't let him leave that sound behind. He slowly stepped deeper into the alley, the shadows growing darker. His breath was visible in the cold air, and he hugged his thin arms around himself as he walked. Halfway into the alley he saw her, a woman lying on the cold ground, her body shaking, her hands pressed weakly against her chest. Her breathing was sharp and painful, like she was trying to get air but her lungs refused to help. Her face was pale, her eyes barely open. She looked like she had been trying to call for help but didn't have the strength. Malik took a step closer, scared but unable to leave. He had never been this close to someone so sick before. "Miss, are you okay?" he asked softly. His voice cracked. The woman moved her lips, but no sound came out. Her eyes filled with fear and helplessness. Malik felt tears pricking his own eyes. She needed help, real help, more than he could give. He looked around desperately, hoping someone would walk by, but the street was empty. He had no phone, no money, nothing, only his courage, and even that was shaking inside him. Cars passed far away, but no one could hear her weak voice. Malik knew if he didn't act fast, she might not survive. His heart pounded as he ran out of the alley, waving his arms at passing cars, shouting for help. Drivers honked angrily and swerved around him. One man yelled at him to get off the road. A woman locked her car doors when she saw him, thinking he wanted to steal. But Malik didn't stop. Tears streamed down his face as he stood in front of another car, refusing to move until it stopped. The driver finally rolled down the window, annoyed, but when Malik begged and pointed toward the alley, something changed in the man's eyes. He grabbed his phone and called an ambulance. Malik ran back to the woman and held her hand gently, whispering that help was coming. She squeezed his fingers weakly, as if thanking him. That night, in the cold darkness, no one noticed the homeless boy who risked everything to save a stranger, but he didn't care about being noticed. He only cared about doing what was right. His small act of courage would soon change his entire life, in ways he never imagined. Malik stood beside the woman as she lay on the cold ground, her breathing sharp and painful. He kept holding her hand gently, hoping she would feel less scared. The alley was silent except for her weak gasps and Malik's trembling voice whispering that help was coming. He had never been so close to someone fighting for life, and every second made his heart beat faster. He kept looking toward the street, praying the ambulance would arrive before it was too late. Minutes felt like hours. The woman's body twitched from pain, and her eyes rolled slightly as if she was drifting away. Malik's small hands shook as he touched her shoulder lightly. "Stay awake, please stay awake," he begged. His own voice cracked because he was scared he might lose her right in front of him. She tried to breathe deeper, but every breath sounded weaker than the last. Malik felt completely helpless, and yet he refused to leave her side. Finally, the sound of a siren echoed in the distance. It grew louder and louder until bright lights flashed at the end of the alley. Malik let out a shaky breath of relief as paramedics rushed toward them with equipment in their hands. One paramedic knelt beside the woman, checking her pulse and placing an oxygen mask over her face. Another paramedic asked Malik what happened. Malik explained everything in short, broken sentences, pointing at the spot where she had collapsed. His voice trembled. But he didn't care about how he looked. The only thing that mattered was the woman breathing again. The paramedics lifted her carefully onto a stretcher and began pushing her toward the ambulance. Malik stepped back slowly, feeling suddenly empty. She was safe now, but as soon as the danger passed, he felt like a shadow again, unnoticed, invisible. The paramedic who spoke to him turned to say thank you, but Malik had already stepped away deeper into the alley. He felt like he shouldn't be seen, like someone might ask him questions he didn't know how to answer, or maybe someone would blame him for being in the wrong place. His life had taught him that people rarely saw good in a boy like him. As the ambulance doors closed, the woman's hand moved weakly. Her fingers reached outward for a moment, as if searching for Malik to thank him, but he was already gone, his small figure slipping behind walls and trash bins until he disappeared from sight. The paramedics looked around confused, wondering where the little hero went, but no one could find him. Within seconds, Malik became the forgotten boy again. Still shaken, he walked back to the old grocery store where he slept. Every step felt heavy, his chest hurt, not from running but from fear and confusion. He wondered if the woman would survive. He wondered if she had a family waiting for her. He wondered if she would ever know that a hungry little boy saved her life. As he curled up on his cardboard bed, he hugged his knees and tried to calm down, but the memory of her pale face and fading breath refused to leave his mind. Morning came with noisy trucks and cold wind touching his skin. Malik sat up slowly, rubbing his tired eyes. He thought about going to the alley again, maybe finding something she dropped, maybe just checking the place where he had first heard her voice, but a deep fear stopped him. He felt like he didn't belong anywhere, not even in the place where he had done something brave. People passing by didn't know what he had done. They didn't know a small homeless boy was the reason a woman was still alive. They only saw a child in dirty clothes and walked past him without a second glance. Throughout the day, Malik wandered the streets, collecting bottles with less energy than usual. His mind kept drifting back to the woman. He hoped she was breathing easier, hoped she wasn't alone. Whenever he closed his eyes, he saw her reaching for air, and it made his heart ache. Despite all the pain and hunger, he felt something new inside him, a quiet pride, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, he mattered, even if only for one night. What Malik didn't know was that while he walked the streets unnoticed, the woman he saved was waking up in a hospital room with bright lights and the steady beeping of machines. She opened her eyes slowly, and her first memory was the touch of a small hand holding hers. She whispered a single question to the nurse. "Where is the boy who saved me?" But no one knew his name, no one knew where he came from. The mystery of that brave child would soon become the center of her life, and her search would lead to a moment that would astonish everyone. Malik woke before sunrise, the sky still dark and silent above him. His stomach growled painfully, but hunger wasn't the first thing on his mind. The woman from last night kept appearing in his thoughts, her pale face, her trembling hands, the way her eyes looked scared and tired. He wondered if she was alive. He wondered if she was breathing more easily. Every time the memory came, his heart tightened a little. He didn't know why he cared so much, but he did. She felt important to him even though he didn't even know her name. As he walked across the quiet streets, he passed by the alley again. The ground was empty now, no trace of the woman left behind. The only proof of last night were faint marks from the stretcher wheels. Malik stood there for a moment, staring at the cold ground. He whispered softly, "I hope you're okay." Even though he knew no one would hear him, he wished he could visit her in the hospital. But he didn't even know which one she had been taken to, and even if he did, they wouldn't let a homeless boy walk in. He continued walking, collecting bottles as usual, but his mind wasn't focused. Several times he tripped because he wasn't watching where he was going. People shouted at him to move. Drivers honked angrily when he crossed the street slowly. Malik just kept his head low, letting the noise pass over him. He wasn't thinking about survival today. He was thinking about the moment he stepped in front of a car to get help. Something inside him had changed that night, something he didn't understand yet. Meanwhile, miles away in a warm hospital room, the woman Malik saved was slowly waking up. Her name was Eleanor, a millionaire business owner who had lived most of her life alone. She had collapsed while walking to her car after a long, stressful day. She remembered the sharp pain, the cold ground, and most of all, the tiny hands that held hers while she was dying. When she opened her eyes fully and saw the nurse adjusting her first question was a weak whisper, "Where is the little boy?" The nurse looked confused. She only knew about the ambulance report, which mentioned a young boy who flagged down a car. But no name, no age, no details. Eleanor struggled to sit up, her chest still hurting. "I need to thank him," she said, her voice full of emotion. She couldn't believe that a small homeless child had cared enough to save her life. The nurse smiled softly and said they would try to find out more. But Eleanor already sensed the truth. The boy didn't stay for praise. He didn't want attention. He saved her and disappeared into the shadows like he was used to being unseen. Back on the streets, Malik sat on a sidewalk curb, watching people rush past with warm coffees and thick jackets. He pulled his knees against his chest to stay warm. His fingers were numb, and every breath came out as a small white cloud. A man walked by and tossed a few coins near him without even looking. Malik picked them up slowly, feeling tired and invisible. He whispered to himself, "At least she's safe." Those words gave him a little strength, enough to stand and keep walking. As the day went on, something unexpected happened. A group of police officers walked around the neighborhood holding a printed sketch of a small boy. People gathered, curious. Malik hid behind a dumpster when he saw them. His heart raced. He didn't trust the police. They had chased homeless kids before. He thought maybe he was in trouble for standing in the road last night. He held his breath, watching from the shadows as the officers asked shopkeepers and pedestrians, "Have you seen a boy who looks like this?" What Malik did not know was that Eleanor had sent them. She wasn't trying to arrest him. She was trying to thank him. She wanted to see his face again, the face of the boy who refused to let her die alone. But Malik only saw uniforms and assumed danger. So he slipped quietly through an alley and ran as far as he could. His feet splashed through puddles and cold air slapped against his cheeks. When he finally stopped running, he didn't know where he was, only that he was far away from the search. That night, he slept under a bridge near the river, hugging himself to stay warm. The sound of water flowing helped calm him, but he kept thinking about the police sketch. Why were they searching for him? Why were so many people looking for a boy no one ever noticed before? Malik didn't know it yet, but the woman he saved wasn't just grateful. She was determined, and she would not stop until she found the boy who changed her life. Their worlds were getting closer each hour, and soon, one unexpected moment would bring them face to face in a way Malik could never imagine. A moment that would astonish everyone. Eleanor sat up in her hospital bed with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The doctors told her she survived only because someone found help in time, but she remembered every detail, the cold air, the darkness, the tiny shaking hands that held hers. She kept seeing the frightened but determined face of that small boy every time she closed her eyes. He didn't look older than 12, maybe younger, but he had more courage than most adults she knew. She couldn't rest, not until she found him and thanked him properly. Something inside her felt connected to him, deeper than gratitude, like fate had pushed their lives together for a reason. Her assistant, Richard, entered the room holding a folder. "Ma'am, the police are searching, but the boy keeps disappearing," he said gently. Eleanor frowned, confused. "Why would he run?" Richard sighed. "Homeless children don't trust authorities. They think someone will blame them." Eleanor's heart tightened. The idea that the boy who saved her life was now hiding in fear made her chest ache more than the illness itself. She asked Richard to bring her clothes. She insisted she wasn't staying in the hospital another day. The doctors protested, but Eleanor was stubborn. She said, "I nearly died. I won't waste another minute lying still." By the evening, she stepped outside, leaning slightly on a cane. The air felt cold on her skin, but her determination warmed her from the inside. She wasn't just a millionaire now. She was a woman on a mission. Meanwhile, Malik wandered through another part of the city, far from where he usually stayed. He avoided the busy streets and hid in narrow lanes. Still scared after seeing the police sketch, he kept thinking someone would grab him or ask him questions he couldn't answer. All he wanted was to stay invisible like always. He didn't know someone important was risking her strength to look for him. Someone who remembered the warmth of his tiny hands when she was fading. Eleanor visited every shelter first, showing the sketch the police drew based on witness descriptions. Some people recognized the small face, others didn't care, but Eleanor kept moving. She refused to give up. She talked to social workers, soup kitchen volunteers, even bus drivers who saw homeless kids running around the city. Slowly, pieces of Malik's life reached her ears. A boy who shared bread with younger kids. A boy who slept behind the grocery store. A boy who never begged but quietly survived each day. Every story tugged at her heart, making her even more determined to find him. Later, she walked through a crowded marketplace, her steps slow but steady. She looked around carefully, hoping to see a familiar face among the crowds. Children dashed between the stalls, scavenging for food. For a moment, she spotted a boy with messy hair and thin arms. Her breath caught. But when he turned around, it wasn't him. Eleanor felt a sting of disappointment. Richard touched her shoulder gently. "We will find him, ma'am." She nodded, though her eyes felt heavy. As night approached, Eleanor refused to return home. Instead, she sat in her car, staring out the window while her driver slowly drove through streets known for homeless camps. She asked him to stop many times so she could step out and speak to anyone who might know something. Some people avoided her, thinking she was just another rich woman passing through, but others softened when they heard her story. An old woman sitting under a blanket said, "I saw a boy like that. He was with two smaller kids. He gave them half of his food." Eleanor felt something warm in her chest. "Do you know where he went?" she asked. The old woman pointed down the road, toward the river. By the time Eleanor reached the river area, the sky was dark. Her driver held a flashlight, guiding her carefully along the edge of the bridge. She saw shadows under it, shapes of people lying on cold ground. Eleanor stepped closer. Ignoring the fear creeping into her legs, she whispered, "Hello, I'm looking for a boy. He saved my life." A few silhouettes shifted, but no one replied. Eleanor sighed and turned to leave, disappointed again. Just then, a small noise caught her attention, the soft sound of someone coughing. Eleanor turned quickly, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. Under the bridge, she saw a small figure hugging his knees, shivering quietly. Her heart skipped a beat. She stepped closer, her voice trembling as she said, "Little one, is your name Malik?" The boy froze, his body tensing in fear. He didn't respond, but Eleanor stepped forward, her hand over her heart. "I'm the woman you saved," she whispered gently. Malik lifted his head slowly, his eyes wide with shock and confusion. He had never imagined she would find him. His world felt like it stopped for a moment as they looked at each other. The fragile bond from the alley returned, and this moment became the beginning of something that would change everything for both of them. Malik stared at the woman standing in front of him, his heart thumping so loudly he thought she might hear it. He could not understand how she found him. He never thought anyone would come looking for a boy like him, especially not someone important. The cold wind pushed under the bridge, making him shiver harder, but he didn't move. He felt frozen between fear and disbelief. The woman stepped closer with gentle eyes, the same eyes he saw weak and fading in the alley. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. Malik lowered his head, unsure what to say. He had never been thanked for anything before. People usually yelled at him or pushed him away. He whispered, "I just didn't want you to die." His voice was soft, almost breaking. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. She crouched down slowly despite the pain in her body until she was at his level. "You are the reason I'm alive," she said, placing one hand lightly over her chest. "I owe you everything." Malik blinked, confused. He didn't understand the meaning of those words. He only knew he did what felt right, not expecting anything in return. Behind them, the river made a gentle flowing sound, cold and steady. Eleanor looked around and her heart broke even more. She saw old blankets, torn bags, and little children curled up under thin pieces of cloth. Malik wasn't the only one suffering, but something about him pulled at her soul. He looked so small, so fragile, yet he was the bravest person she had ever met. She reached out her hand slowly. "Come with me, Malik," she said softly. "You shouldn't be living like this." Malik's eyes widened with fear. He shook his head quickly. "No, I can't. People yell at me when I go near nice places." Eleanor felt a painful squeeze in her chest. She understood why he was scared. Life had taught him that doors were not meant for him, but she refused to let fear control him any longer. "You won't get in trouble," she said gently. "You are with me." Her voice was warm, steady, and full of something Malik didn't recognize at first. Safety. No one had ever spoken to him like that before, not since his mother passed away. A small memory of her flashed in his mind, making his throat tighten. She used to hold his hand the same way, with kindness instead of fear. Eleanor slowly removed her warm scarf and wrapped it around Malik's shoulders. He flinched at first because he wasn't used to gentle touches, but soon he felt warmth spread through him. It was the warmest thing he had felt in years. His eyes filled with tears. He tried to wipe them secretly, but Eleanor noticed. "It's all right," she said softly. "You don't have to hide your tears." Malik felt something crack inside him, a wall he had kept up for so long. He sniffed and whispered, "I'm not used to someone being nice." Eleanor's heart ached so deeply she almost cried too. She held his hand carefully, ready to pull back if he felt scared, but Malik didn't. His small fingers tightened weakly around her hand, and that simple touch told Eleanor everything she needed to know. She stood slowly and guided him toward her car parked nearby. Malik's steps were hesitant, like he expected someone to shout at him or push him away, but no one did. Richard held the door open with a gentle smile. Malik blinked at him, confused that even a stranger was treating him kindly. Inside the car, Malik sat stiffly, afraid he might dirty the seats. He tucked his knees close, trying to make himself smaller. Eleanor noticed and touched his hand lightly. "You're safe," she whispered. "Don't be scared." He nodded slowly but didn't relax fully. The city lights passed outside the window as the car moved. Malik watched them quietly, feeling like he was entering another world, a world where he didn't belong, but also a world he never knew he could be part of. Eleanor studied his thin face and hollow cheeks. She could see how much he had suffered, and her decision became stronger with every passing minute. She didn't want to just thank him, she didn't want to send him back to the cold streets, she wanted to give him life, a future, a place where he would never be hungry or afraid again. Malik had saved her life, but she felt like he had also awakened something in her heart, something she thought she lost long ago, the ability to care deeply. As the car drove toward her home, Malik's eyes slowly closed from exhaustion. For the first time in years, he fell asleep not on cold concrete, not shivering from fear, but leaning against a soft seat with warmth around him. Eleanor watched him rest, a silent promise forming in her mind. This boy would never be alone again. His life was about to change in ways he could never imagine, and soon, the world would witness a moment that would astonish everyone. Malik woke slowly, blinking at the soft light touching his face. For a moment he didn't know where he was. His body expected the cold, the hard concrete, the smell of garbage under the bridge, but instead he felt warmth on his skin, a blanket over his shoulders, and a gentle scent of something clean and safe. His eyes opened wider, and he saw a large living room with soft carpets, tall lamps, and warm colors everywhere. He sat up quickly, panic flashing in his eyes. He whispered, "Where am I?" his voice shaking. From across the room, Eleanor stepped in with a small smile. She held a bowl of warm soup, steam rising from it in soft curls. Malik stiffened when he saw her. Still not used to being near someone kind, she walked slowly so he wouldn't feel scared. "You're safe, Malik," she said softly. "You fainted from exhaustion in the car, so we brought you inside." Malik's eyes darted across the room, unsure if he was allowed to be here. He hugged the blanket tighter, whispering, "I shouldn't be in a place like this." Eleanor placed the bowl gently on the table and knelt beside him. "You deserve warmth as much as anyone," she said. Her voice was steady, comforting, and full of meaning. Malik lowered his gaze, ashamed of how dirty and small he felt in such a beautiful place. "I don't belong here," he said quietly. His voice cracked at the edges as if he believed those words were carved deep inside his heart. Eleanor shook her head gently. "You belong where people care about you," she whispered. Richard entered with fresh clothes folded neatly. Malik stared at them as if they belonged to someone else. He couldn't imagine wearing clean clothes again, not after years of torn shirts and worn-out shoes. Eleanor encouraged him softly. "Try them on when you're ready," she said. Malik nodded slowly, his hands trembling as he accepted them. He disappeared into the bathroom and closed the door behind him. When he saw himself in the mirror, he froze. His face looked thinner than he remembered. His hair messy, his eyes tired and older than 12. He whispered to his reflection, "Why are they helping me?" When he came out again, the clothes were a little big, but they were warm and soft. Eleanor's eyes softened when she saw him. "You look wonderful," she said kindly. Malik looked down, shy and overwhelmed. He sat on the edge of the couch while Eleanor handed him the warm soup. His hands shook, and he almost spilled it, but she placed her hand over his slowly, steadying him. "Take your time," she whispered. He nodded and slowly began to eat, each spoonful warming his empty stomach like fire in winter. As Malik ate, Eleanor sat across from him, studying the small boy who had saved her life. "Malik, can you tell me about yourself?" she asked gently. Malik froze again. His past was filled with pain, lost memories, and broken pieces he rarely touched. But something in Eleanor's eyes told him he didn't need to hide. After a long silence, he whispered, "My mom died when I was little." His voice trembled. "My dad left after that. He never came back." Eleanor's chest ached as he spoke. She wanted to reach out and hug him, but she waited, giving him space to speak at his own pace. Malik continued, "I used to sleep in our old home, but someone bought it. They threw me out." He swallowed hard. "I've been on the street since then." Every word felt heavy, as though he was reliving each cold night and each hungry day all over again. Eleanor wiped a tear before it could fall. She wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, but he continued quietly, "I thought saving you was the least I could do. You looked so hurt." Eleanor leaned forward, her voice shaking with emotion. "Malik, you didn't just save me," she whispered. "You changed me." Malik looked up, confused. Eleanor sighed softly. "My life was empty, no family, no one close, but you reminded me that kindness still exists." Richard watched from the corner of the room, silently amazed at how this small boy had softened Eleanor in ways no one had managed in years. Then Eleanor spoke the words that made Malik want to cry. "You will never be alone again," she said slowly. "Not if you want to stay with me." Malik's breath caught, his eyes widened. He wasn't sure he heard correctly. "Stay here," he whispered. Eleanor nodded gently. "Yes, Malik, this can be your home." The blanket slipped from Malik's shoulders as he stared at her, hope rising inside him like a fragile flame. He whispered, "But why me?" Eleanor smiled with tears in her eyes. because you're brave, because you're kind, because you saved me, and because you deserve a life filled with warmth, not cold streets." Malik's heart squeezed until he felt it might break. For the first time in years, he felt something he thought he lost forever. The feeling of belonging. He took a shaky breath as Eleanor reached out and held his hand gently, and in that moment Malik realized his life was changing forever. A change that would soon astonish everyone. Malik sat quietly on the soft couch, his small fingers gripping the blanket as if it might disappear any second. His mind kept repeating Eleanor's words, "This can be your home." They echoed inside him like a dream he never dared to dream. He had spent years believing homes were only for other children, cleaner children, loved children, not a boy who slept under bridges and lived off leftovers. He whispered softly, "Are you sure you want me here?" As if one wrong question would make everything fall apart. Eleanor sat beside him, her voice warm and steady. "Yes, Malik, I've never been more sure." She reached out and placed her hand gently over his. "You saved my life, but more than that, you showed me a heart stronger than anything I've known." Malik swallowed hard, feeling a tightness in his chest, something between fear and hope. "But I don't know how to live in a place like this," he whispered. "I don't know rules, I don't know how to be normal." Eleanor smiled softly. "You don't need to know, Malik, you just need to be yourself." Richard stepped forward respectfully, clearing his throat. "Ma'am, if you wish to help him long-term, there are things we need to arrange." Malik flinched at the sound, afraid something complicated would take this chance away, but Eleanor nodded, determined. "I know, Richard," she said, then turned to Malik. "If you want, I can become your legal guardian." Malik blinked, his lips parting slightly. He didn't know what those words meant fully, but he understood enough. It meant she wanted him in her life, not for one night, not for a week, but for real. He stared at her, his eyes shining with tears he tried to hold back. "You want to take care of me, forever?" he whispered. Eleanor gently cupped his cheek. "If you let me," she said, "I want to give you what you never had, a family, a home, a future." Malik's hands trembled, he could barely breathe from the weight of emotions inside him. No one had ever chosen him before, no one had stayed. Everyone he loved had disappeared or forgotten him. But here was a woman he met only because he saved her life, offering him something he thought was impossible. He looked down at his small hands, still rough from dirt and cold nights. "What if I'm too broken?" he whispered, his voice shaking. "What if I can't be good enough?" Eleanor shook her head firmly. "Malik, you are not broken," she said. "You are strong, you are brave, and you are enough exactly as you are." Malik felt something warm spread inside his chest, a feeling he couldn't describe, like sunlight reaching a place inside him that had been dark for years. Richard quietly stepped outside to give them space, and Eleanor guided Malik toward a spare room. "I want to show you something," she said softly. When the door opened, Malik gasped. The room was simple but warm, a soft bed, clean sheets, a small desk, and a window where the sunlight painted the floor in golden light. "This room was empty," Eleanor said gently, "but now, it's yours." Malik touched the edge of the bed as if it might vanish under his fingers. He pressed his palm against the soft blanket, feeling its warmth. His breathing became unsteady as tears filled his eyes. "My own bed," he whispered shakily. "I've never had one." Eleanor's chest tightened. She walked over and knelt beside him. "You will never sleep on cold ground again," she said softly. Malik suddenly wrapped his thin arms around her, burying his face into her shoulder. A small sob escaped him, trembling and raw. Eleanor held him gently, her hand on the back of his head, comforting him like a mother who had been waiting her whole life to hold him. "You're safe now," she whispered. "I promise you you're safe." After a long time, Malik pulled back, wiping his tears with his sleeve. He looked around the room again, touching the pillow, the lamp, the soft carpet. Everything felt unreal. "Do I really get to stay here?" he asked again, afraid the answer might change. Eleanor nodded firmly. "Yes, Malik, you do." Later that evening, Malik sat at the dining table for the first time in years. Real food was placed in front of him, warm and full of flavor. He ate slowly at first, unsure if he was allowed to take more, but Eleanor smiled and gently pushed a second serving toward him. "Eat as much as you want," she said. Malik hesitated, then nodded with gratitude. He felt warmth fill not just his stomach, but his heart too. That night, when he finally lay in his new bed, he stared at the ceiling with wide eyes, afraid that if he closed them everything would disappear. But the mattress held him softly, the blanket wrapped him in warmth, and as sleep slowly pulled him in, he whispered into the quiet room, "Thank you for finding me." What Malik didn't know was that the next morning Eleanor would make a choice that would astonish the world. A decision greater than anything he had imagined, setting the final stage of a transformation that would change both their lives forever. The next morning, sunlight slowly filled Malik's new room. He opened his eyes and stared at the ceiling for a long moment, half expecting the walls around him to change back into the cold concrete under the bridge. but the soft blanket over his chest, the quiet hum of the heater and the gentle light through the window told him the truth. This was real, he was safe. His heart felt different today, soft and warm, like hope had finally found a home inside him. He got up slowly, touching the furniture again just to be sure it wasn't a dream. Then he stepped out of his room, following the smell of breakfast. Eleanor was sitting at the table with a warm smile. When she saw him, her eyes softened even more. "Good morning, Malik," she said gently. Malik stopped for a second, surprised. It had been so long since someone greeted him in the morning. He whispered softly, "Good morning," and sat down with shy movements, afraid he might break something by accident. As he ate pancakes slowly, savoring every bite, Eleanor exchanged a quiet look with Richard. Today was the day she planned something big, something that would not only change her life but give Malik everything he had been denied for years. When Malik finished eating, Eleanor folded her hands and said softly, "Malik, there's somewhere I want to take you today." Malik looked up nervously. "Am I in trouble?" he asked quickly. Fear still lived inside him like a shadow. Eleanor shook her head gently. "No, little one, you're not in trouble," she assured him. "We're going to make something official." The ride in the car felt different today. The city outside looked less frightening, less harsh. Malik watched people passing by, cars speeding, birds flying between buildings. Everything looked brighter. Even the cold air felt kinder. Eleanor glanced back at him often, making sure he wasn't anxious. She reached her hand back, and he held it tightly, her touch calming his trembling heart. Finally, they arrived at a tall building with big glass doors. Malik stepped out slowly, unsure why they were here. Inside the waiting room, he saw families sitting together, children holding their parents' hands. His stomach tightened. He whispered, "Why are we here?" Eleanor knelt beside him, looking into his eyes. "Because today," she said softly, "I want to make you my son." Malik's breath caught in his throat, his eyes widened, shining with disbelief. "Your son?" he whispered. His voice trembled so much he could barely speak. Eleanor nodded, tears building in her eyes. "Yes, Malik," she said, "I want to adopt you legally so no one can ever take you away from me, so you always have a home, a family, and a future." Malik felt his legs weaken, so he sat slowly on the bench. Tears filled his eyes before he could hold them back. "Someone like me can be adopted," he whispered. "Someone like me can be wanted." Eleanor gently held his face in her hands. "You are not someone like me," she said softly. "You are Malik, the boy who saved my life, the boy who deserves love and safety and everything good this world can offer." Malik's tears fell onto her hands as he whispered, "I've never belonged anywhere." Eleanor wrapped her arms around him tightly. "You belong with me now," she whispered. "You always will." When they entered the office, the adoption coordinator smiled kindly. She had heard the story already. A homeless boy's courage saving a millionaire's life. A bond forming between two souls who needed each other. Papers were signed, questions were asked. Malik remained quiet, his heart beating fast. Every moment felt unreal, like the world was rewriting itself around him. Then the final signatures were completed. The coordinator stood, walked around the desk and gently touched Malik's shoulder. "Congratulations," she said warmly. "You have a mother now." Those words hit Malik like sunlight breaking through a storm. Eleanor took his hand and whispered, "Let's go home, son." Malik held her hand tighter than ever, afraid to let go. They walked out of the building together, the cold wind brushing against them. But Malik didn't feel cold anymore. The warmth he felt inside was something deeper than anything he had ever known, something he thought he would never feel again. A sense of belonging. News of the adoption spread quickly. Reporters wanted interviews, people wanted the story. The homeless boy who saved a millionaire, they called it. But Eleanor refused to let Malik become a spectacle. She protected him fiercely, telling the world only one thing: "He saved my life, now I want to give him the life he deserves." Malik didn't fully understand the attention, but he understood one thing clearly: he was no longer alone. Weeks passed, and Malik began school for the first time. His new teachers welcomed him kindly, and although he struggled at first, Eleanor helped him every night, encouraging him gently. Every time Malik felt discouraged, she reminded him, "You are stronger than you think." Malik smiled more often now, laughed more often, and slept without fear. He made friends, learned new things, and discovered joys he never knew existed. One evening, as Eleanor tucked him into bed, Malik whispered, "Why did you choose me?" Eleanor brushed hair from his forehead and answered softly, "Because you found me when I needed someone most, and because you deserved someone too." Malik hugged her tightly, tears of gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you for loving me," he whispered. Eleanor kissed his forehead gently. "Thank you for saving me," she whispered back. And so, the homeless boy the world never noticed became the cherished son of a woman whose life he changed. Their story traveled far, inspiring thousands, reminding people that kindness can rewrite destinies. When Malik closed his eyes that night, he whispered the words he once believed he would never say, This is my home. His journey from cold streets to warm arms astonished everyone, but to Malik, it was simple. Love had finally found him and he never let it go.